Hey, welcome back into Kicking Off with me, Kevin Egan. Hope you and your loved ones are keeping safe and well. Look, as promised, this podcast will jump outside of the realm of football at times and chat about different things in life. And our guest this week used to be a pro footballer, but then he became a member of one of the most successful boy bands the world has ever seen. Then jumped to TV and radio. So I'm going to chat with my guest Nicky Byrne about reinventing himself, how he managed to go from football to a boy band, travelling the world, selling over 55 million records at Westlife, and then becoming a really successful TV host with Dancing with the Stars and radio host as well. I'm fascinated by this guy, and he's a brilliant storyteller. He's a great laugh, and I'm thrilled to say today we're kicking off with Nicky Byrne. Nicky Byrne, what a gent. Thanks for taking the time. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Kev. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Keeping sane here in Atlanta, Georgia. All okay in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting by. I think the whole world, the crazy thing about this pandemic is that there's no real corners of the earth that isn't affected. And you see countries getting better and then getting worse. And I think in Ireland it's happened a little bit. Dublin are back into a little bit of lockdown restrictions. But we just I think we just got to follow the guidelines and do, wear the mask, wash your face, or wash your hands, wear the mask, and try and hope for the best, but it's a strange one because it affects people differently, and it's, I think humans are used to, kind of going out, and meeting with people and that little bit of intimacy and that's all changed. So it's definitely strange times. There's no doubt about that.
And I would say, honestly, and I shouldn't say this, but especially the Irish, because I'm just so used to, and people used to make fun of me in my old job in Miami when I'd say, like, we don't go out. It's not that we drink a lot. We sometimes may do, but we like the chats. We like that conversation and just to get out of the house and sit at a bar with a friend and just have a laugh for a few hours. And that side of things is a big miss.
It's those words that, kind of people don't really understand outside of Ireland. I think we have to explain whether it's crack or that type of stuff. It's like this is not a class A drug. This is, having a bit of fun. But, you're right, because everything in Ireland is fixed over, whether it's a cup of tea or, I'm feeling stressed, let's have a cup of tea. Or I broke up with my boyfriend or my missus, or let's have a cup of tea. Or with the lads, let's go down for a pint. And I think that from all ages that exists. As soon as you're old enough to have a pint or if it's a cup of tea, that's where everything is. It's around a chat. And when you don't have that in your life, you might get away with it for a while, but it's certainly, I can't see the future being this restrictive on people. It can't be good,
No, it won't. What do you do for your own mental health to kind of keep yourself in check during a time like this? Because we all have our own little routines, don't we? Mine is just try and get out and run or do something physical, kick a ball if I can find an empty pitch somewhere. What do you do yourself?
Physical is it. It's the same for me. Whether it's running, I go through phases where I'll run a lot, and then I go through phases where I'll train. I have to train at least 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, I might get away with, I'm probably, how do I put this? I'm the skinniest fat person you'll ever meet. So I train hard, but I go through stages where I'll eat like shit because I want to enjoy it. Like if weekend comes, I'm straight down the chipper, or it's pizzas, or it's whatever. But then come Monday, it's hit the gym, it's get into shape. And I like that balance, I do like that balance. I think I've been through stages where I've trained like crazy to get myself into ridiculous shape, and then you're not happy. Because you're watching carbs or you're doing it, and that can only last for so long, And then I've gone the opposite way. I've not trained for months, and then you feel sluggish, and you feel a bit crap. So I've been, I suppose I've had from an early age, football has always been my life. So I've been used to training 4 or 5 days a week, and then when I signed pro, it was 6, 7 days a week. So I know what's required, and then you kind of, at my age now, at 41. You know what you need to do, and it doesn't get any easier. It just gets harder,
Let's go back a long time, I suppose, then to when you were playing pro and when you went to Leeds United. You probably had all the dreams in the world of that being your career, did you? For the foreseeable future.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you go right back to when I was born in late '78. So when I was early '80s, my earliest memory of football was the 1985 FA Cup final when Norman Whiteside scored for United against Everton. You won't remember that, but straight the year after that was the '86 World Cup and Maradona's famous hand of God and all that. I just fell in love with football. I was playing football in my garden. I was playing football in the house. I think I have the record for the most windows broken inside.
No chance. I could
you beat me. But yeah, I mean, I remember I got used to it. Funny, the first time I ever broke a window in my house, I remember absolutely freaking out, thinking my parents are going to go mental, and they did. But they got used to it. And I think I broke one with a football, one with a Gaelic football, one with a golf club, and a little golf ball. So if it was anything to do with a football, chances are, or any sort of ball, chances are I broke windows. But yeah, that was my earliest memory. And then I signed my first earliest memory playing soccer. I went to the Home Farm schoolboy, Home Farm Football Club in Whitehall, which would be one of the top clubs in Dublin. And I went at 6, 7 years of age. My dad brought me to the mini leagues. And then that was the type of thing where you play in the mini leagues for a team and you either get scouted for Home Farm or you don't. And I didn't. But I had the time of my life playing. And then the following year, I went back. I was an outfield player then. And then the following year, I went back to the mini leagues. My dad had trained me as a goalkeeper because he was a keeper.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, and then I got scouted. So then all of a sudden I signed for Home Farm at age 6, 7. And I played 4 years under 10 because there was no, as it is now, under 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s. 10s was the first. So I played like 4 years under 10. And then I stayed at Home Farm for 10 years after that, So it was, and then went to St. Kevin's for a year before I headed across to Leeds.
So you were at Leeds when Tony Yeboah was banging in volleys, were you?
I was. You're not going to believe this. If you zoom in on that goal, I am sitting in the front row in a Leeds tracksuit. And why that was because the youth team, I was only there 2 months at that, maybe even 6 weeks at that point. And the youth team used to have to do ball boy around the pitch. So we were all given designated parts of the ground. And I was in the cop, that stand, as they call it. My area was right behind the goal for 2 reasons. One, I was a goalkeeper. So what they used to do was the 2 keepers were put right behind the goal to watch the pro keepers play. So for Leeds, it was Luke Giambini. And then if they were playing that night, it was David James for Liverpool. So I was like first like the advertising board, then the seat, which was me. Now it's hard to pick me out, but I'm there. And when the ball, what a strike! I mean, and then I'm a Manchester United fan, always was. But you sign for Leeds, you become a Leeds fan overnight, and you're jumping up. They're beating Liverpool, and probably one of the best goals ever scored in the Premier League.
Definitely.
Amazing, like really was.
I mean, you focus on just the technique of that goal, right? And he scored another one very similar. I'm trying to remember who it was against. Maybe
Wimbledon. About 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after that, where that one I think was on his right foot. He cut inside. I think he kind of takes it down and then just half volley and right, yeah. And then what happened then was every time Yeboah got the ball in any home game, the home crowd started this shoot, no matter where he was. Like it became a joke. Even if he got on the halfway line, people would jokingly tell him to shoot, But Tony Yeboah was a gentleman, and like obviously I was a youth team player, so I wasn't his best friend by any stretch. But if you'd be in the corridor and you'd say, "Morning, Tony, how do you feel today?" and he'd always go, "Still feel like the king. Still feel like the king." He was such a nice guy.
Love it. When you focus on the technique of that goal as well, you think about the Paul Scholes against Aston Villa. You think about great volleys that we've seen in the Premier League. Van Persie's against Charlton, I think it was obviously special. Di Canio too. His technique, how he managed to arc his leg and kick it the way he did was absolutely outrageous. So Leeds, Nicky, you ended up going back to Ireland a year or so later. Spent some time in Ireland, but when the moment came, or where was the moment that you realised, okay, football, it's not going to happen for me?
I think it built up over a few years. I think the strange thing is, and there's a lot to be said for, let's say, players that go away and then don't make it, come home for whatever reason. I mean, it could be talent, it could be not good enough, it could be, not tall enough, it could be homesick, it could be injuries, it could be just bad luck. Opportunity that football's about opportunity, and when you get a chance like that, like going abroad, that's only the start of it. I always say to young lads coming through, getting a contract, everyone wants to play in England at a young age if they want to play football, and getting the opportunity to play in England is only one step up the ladder. It's a huge step, but there's 50 steps ahead of you after that, and you need luck, you need a bit of everything, to be honest. You need talent, you need work rate, all those things. And to be honest with you, there's probably better players that have come home over the years than have actually made it, for whatever reason. And they just, throw the towel in, some of them. But I think it was over a course of probably about 6 or 9 months. I'd gone back from my second year at Leeds. I was on fire. My year one, actually, I'd ended up by default getting into the first team squad because the 2 goalkeepers, Mark Beanie, had been sent off in a reserve game, and then I was the next in line because the third keeper had gone out on loan. So all of a sudden I'm 16 and a half. I'm in the Leeds first team squad against Southampton in the Premier League game at the Dell. My mum still has the cutout of the team sheet where it says Lukic, Byrne, Dorigo,
Deadly.
Kelly, Weatherall, McAllister, Speed, all those players.
Was Letitia there? Was he? Was he playing that day?
He played that game, yeah, against us, yeah. And a funny story, actually, on the way to the game, the gaffer, which was Howard Wilkinson, called me up to the front of the bus. And remember, I'm 16 and a half. Like, I'm well out of my depth, but I'm the next keeper in line. And he was never going to play me, obviously. I was only there in case, Lukic broke his arm. And at that point, he probably still would have played Lukic with one arm instead of putting on a 16-year-old. But he said to me, are you ready for this? Should I call on you? And like, your heart is saying, your head is saying no, your heart is saying yes. But you don't want to let the gaffer down. So you go, oh, yeah, I'm ready. He goes, Matt Letitia, and he named a couple of players. And I went, yeah, of course I'm ready. And you're like, your head's going, no, you're not. But look, it wasn't. I was never going to get on the pitch unless Lucas got injured. And we drew the game 1-1 actually. But I still have the team sheet. It's still a great memory. And I always, all the lads that were in our youth team, the lads who made it, like Harry Kuehl, Jonathan Woodgate, Alan Mabry, who else? Alan Smith was coming through behind us. There were so many good players. Paul Robinson. I always say, particularly to Mabes and Damien Lynch and a few of the lads, Steve McPhail, I always say, I was the first one to get into the first team squad out of all of us. Doesn't matter by default. I was only 16. But anyway, skip ahead a year and a half later, and it was probably Christmas of my second year. I was in the team. I was playing really well. I was training really well. And with being a goalkeeper, you're in a very good position because you train with the first team keepers. So there was at that point, there was Nigel Martin, who just signed, and Mark Beanie. Then there was myself, Paul Robinson, and a guy called Simon Briggs. So it was always the 5 keepers. And then when you were finished your goalkeeping sessions, a lot of the time you'd be brought across to the first team squad to do shooting practice. So when you're doing shooting, they wouldn't just rotate the first team keepers. They would rotate all the keepers. So you're in with everyone from Lee Sharp was there at the time, or Gary Speed, or Yeboah, and all these lads. Thomas Brolin had just signed. So you're making world-class saves. You're getting buried as well, but you're making world-class saves. So you're in the shop window, let's say. But I've noticed, height was always against me all the way growing up. I'm 5'10". Just when I was measured at Leeds, I was just 5'10". I'm probably a little bit smaller now. I think you shrink as you get older. I'm probably about 5'9", 3/4.
The hair keeps you going a little bit here.
Yeah, well, I'm about 6'6" with the hair. but it was so, Kev, I used to wear rugby studs to make myself, give me any little bit of, advantage I could get. But anyway, so it wasn't a bit. I could feel that my height was coming against me. Not in the games, I never felt, I was never chipped. I was very quick. I was very agile. But I could sense that I wasn't getting reserve call-ups when, say, the lads around me might be getting a game in the reserves. And I was thinking, my contract was up in 6 months' time. And then you have the big meeting with, at the time, was with Paul Hart, which was our youth team coach, Eddie Gray, and then George Graham, who was the gaffer then. Howard Wilkinson had been sacked. So I always remember the conversation where they said to me, look, if we play you in a game where in the Premiership where we're playing Everton, Duncan Ferguson was leading the attack for Everton. They're gonna put everything on top of you, and football is all about points and money and that. So I guess I could argue the point because I picked out loads of smaller keepers. Andy Gorham was at 5'10", but Gorham was probably twice my width. And I always remember Eddie Gray making the point to me, but Gorham somehow fills the goal. Now I was only 19. You kind of fill out when you're a man anyway. But I had a choice at that point when my contract was not going to be renewed. What do I do? I'm 19. Do I go down the divisions? I'd gone on loan for a game to Scarborough. We'd lost the game 4-1. That didn't go too well. I was thinking, do I really want that? Scarborough were Division 4 at that point, which was League 3 now. And then I had a trial game at Cambridge United again in League 3. 19, traveling around from Premiership down on your own, different. I just thought, you know what? The League of Ireland at the time was a really strong league, and I thought I might as well go home and play happy football and get a job. And I said to you earlier, I always wanted to be a cop. I had a huge kind of admiration for the police and the guards, and I went home, and that was the avenue I took until the Westlife thing happened, So
isn't it mental though? On that note, one of the most successful goalkeepers here in US soccer history, the most appearances in Major League Soccer ever, is Nick Romando, who's smaller than you, and who just makes the goal his own, and he's got great sense of timing. Feet are excellent. It just wrapped up his career only last season. I think he was nearly 40.
What
And
height was he?
I think Nick Romando's like 5'8", 5'9". I've never actually met him, so I've never stood next to him. But
Yeah.
I just think intelligence has to play a role. Keylor Navas, for me, is one of the best keepers in the world right now, and was forever underrated at Real Madrid, to the point where like a fax machine got in the way of De Gea joining. And for me, Navas is 10 times the keeper De Gea is, because he's a chip on his shoulder. He was playing with Saprissa in Costa Rica. He got a chance to go to Levante in Spain. It's the second choice keeper in Levante. Got the winning, or won the job to be the number one keeper there. Then got brought in to be Casillas' backup at Real Madrid, and eventually gets a chance. And Florentino Perez did everything in his power to not have Keylor Navas as his number one keeper. And Navas just continued to prove people wrong. And he's 6'1", Navas, but it's still not your Courtois, who's 6'6".
Well, I mean, my favorite keeper after, like, growing up, obviously somebody different, but this guy I'm about to say, is, you mentioned him and he's younger than me, is Casillas. I always felt Casillas had everything. Now, but again, Casillas was considered to be small, and he's probably, I think Casillas, I've never met him, but I think he's about 6 foot, maybe touching 6'1" at most. But it's funny, because I've said this before. A lot of people, you'll always hear the term too small to be a goalkeeper, but you never hear the term too tall to be a goalkeeper. And the reason being is because of the size of the goal and because of coming with crosses. But actually, most of the goals conceded around a goalkeeper is around you. It's if the ball's been put, drilled into the bottom corner, top corner, most keepers, no matter what height they are, won't get there if the pace is right. But if you can cut out, I always remember our goalkeeping coaching, if you can cut out what's around you very quick, if you're sharp, you're fit, you're quick, your reflexes are good, and you can cut out the goals around you, it's almost like a small goal inside a big goal. You'll actually take down the numbers of goals you'll concede that season. That's where Casillas was brilliant. One-on-ones, he was brilliant. Shea Given was very similar. Great, around you. I hate saying great shot stopper, because you should be a great shot stopper if you're a goalkeeper. That comes, with the game. But Casillas for me was always one of the best. But nowadays, and I don't get very vocal about it, because people might go, well, sure, you're a pop star, a TV presenter, But my whole life was goalkeeping. And I often say, when you see very, very tall goalkeepers, and I'm talking 6'6", that doesn't mean they can't be brilliant, but a lot of them get beaten so easily, very, very close to them, down low. They might be brilliant at coming for crosses where the defenders need them to get them out of trouble. But when you need them to be, around a goalkeeper, sometimes they fall short. I mean, Courtois was a good example a few years ago in the Champions League. Messi beat him twice.
Through the legs.
From 18 yards through his legs. And I always say, it's no shame getting nutmegged in a one-on-one where you're trying to, kind of anticipate what he might do, or it's 50-50. But if you're getting beat through your legs from 16, 17 yards, then you need to be looking at why aren't you blocking that with your feet, or why aren't you making that save? And, he's a good example of, for me, great keeper, but huge, in terms of, like, down low, he's maybe a little bit suspect,
Yeah, exactly. Can I ask you then about the influence of your folks and your dad? I'm so sorry he passed away in 2009, I believe, and he seemed to be this fella who had an infectious enthusiasm for life and be a great coach for you in many ways. And he was a football man, as you said, a goalkeeper, which I didn't know. But he was also a showman, like you are now as well. So how much at the time did you lean on him to say, all right, well, football may not be for me. What other avenues will I go down? Like, what kind of influence was he back then?
Well, again, the influence happened naturally. Before I needed to ask his advice later on in life, the influence was there because, like you said, he was a showman. So now he was a painter and decorator by trade. So he was a hard-working man who got up like any other hard-working person, out the door at 8 o'clock and worked all day, painting. In fact, he was the head maintenance officer in the airport hotel in Dublin Airport, the one on the roundabout, as you come into the airport for nearly 20 years, I would have said. So my life from that part of my life as a young child, my dad was out to work and then come in for dinner, and then he would literally either take me training, or else the days that he couldn't take me training, I would have to go with one of the, carpooling with one of the other parents. And he'd be out, he would come in with covered in paint, into the shower, clean himself up, have his dinner, and get into like these royal blue suit. Like Monday might be a blue suit, Tuesday was a red suit. And he was out the door because he was a cabaret singer. So he was out the door. The band, it was called Nicky and Studs. He was the lead singer. So it went from dinner dances. He was gigging weddings, dinner dances, funerals, whatever type. 6-7 days a week, a different color suit, the frilly shorts, everything you might have seen on me on Dancing with the Stars as as the host years later. It probably was in my DNA from early stages. But my dad trained me in the garden as a keeper. He was a keeper. Now, he was smaller than me, funny enough. He was probably 5'7", but he was so fast. And I still meet some of his friends now, and they'll say to me, one, your dad was a great singer, but two, and they'd always say, he was a better singer than you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thank you. And then they go, better goalkeeper than you as well. But allegedly he was, I never really got to see him playing goal, but very fast, and nicknamed the Cat, as the old kind of names for goalkeepers back then. But I think as you, to answer your question, the inspiration was there, you know, the admiration was there as well. And my dad, he wasn't just a dad. He was a friend. He was, you know, my own friends loved him. He was a cool dad. He was all those things. And, you know, he just looked after you, you know. And even in years of advice, one thing, I don't think he wanted me to come home from England back in the day. I think he worried for me in deep down, as a man would have done as well, to go, well, you know, you've put so much time and effort from age 6 as a goalkeeper. You're playing professional football at the highest level. Why would you, if you need to take a step back to prove yourself, do it? But I knew from playing, not that I wasn't good enough, I knew that managers wanted monsters in goal. And I knew from the Premier League keepers that would come to play against Leeds United, the youth team, we'd stand in the corridors to see, for example, Roy Keane walking down the corridor when Man United arrived. Like, you want to see all these big names. But I would always be looking at the keepers as well, and they were always, like, Ludo McCloskey at West Ham was 6'4", 6'5". David Seaman, 6'4", 6". Schmeichel, 6'4", 6'5". And I'd be looking like this as they were passing me, going, oh, you know, these are big, big lads. And funny, 10 years before that, you would have had the likes of, when I was a kid, Peter Shilton, Neville Southall, Ray Clements. They were all hovering around 6 foot, you know, and it was the English game had gone bigger. And I remember thinking in my head as well, like, we'd probably go to Italy, where the keepers were more wanted for their shot stopping and agility more than the physical, you know, crossing and the British game, as they say, back then. And you touched on America. My teachers, before I went to Leeds, always wanted me to do a scholarship in the States, where I'd go and probably, you know, coach, play, and then eventually coach. Just I didn't really, you know, look into it back then. You know, maybe my life could have been way different.
Yeah, exactly. But then Westlife comes about, the opportunity of a lifetime, probably one of those sliding doors moments where we all get a bit of luck in our lives, and when you get luck, you have to capitalize on it. And there's no one who's reached the top who hasn't had luck. But that moment comes along. You're obviously very talented, and you have probably, like your dad, you know, similar infectious enthusiasm for life, like I said. So that moment comes along. Was it a no-brainer at the time to say, I'm going for this? Or was it like, no, this is for me?
What happened, if I give you the real story, true to life story, was I was in Leeds, and you get a lot of free time. So you train in the morning from 10 to 12. You might have lunch, then you might train 1 to 2 or 1 to 4 or whatever. But some afternoons you don't even have training. So I found professional football quite boring. You know, I found it too much time on my hands. Found it like, you know, and I can understand. You see years later, Keith Gillespie, for example, who had a gambling addiction, and he talks about it in his biography and stuff. And footballers, not necessarily at my level, but at all levels. Well, at my level, we're on great money for our age. But when you break into the first team and you're on thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds a week, you've got all this money and all this free time. So footballers, you know, they all love their clothes, they all love their cars, and you know, what else you spend your money on. So that's how some lads kind of, you know, turn to drink, or, you know, the gambling addiction and different things like that. So I was at, let's say, the beginning of, let's say, superstardom footballer-wise, where, you know, the money was great for my age. Had I got the second and third contract, you would have been, you know, serious professional money, with so much free time. And I always remember feeling, you know, not that I'm not a big gambler. I don't really drink that much. I never did, even back then. But I can see why, well, what do you do with your spare time? So I was playing music, and I was, obviously the background of music was there from my dad. I was playing music. Now, put into that being an Irish guy abroad, particularly in England, and with the whole rivalry and, you know, historic political stuff that goes on between British and Irish, we would have great banter with the English lads, the Irish lads. I mean, even in training sessions, it was the rest of the world against England. And it was like me, Steve McPhail, Alan Mabry, Harry Kewell, all those international lads would play matches against England. The coaches would spur us on as well, by the way. And the tackles, believe you me, you'd need 4 legs to go into some of the tackles. And that continued into your canteen, into your digs, because we all lived together. So I got this real patriotic love, and everybody does when you live away. You'll be the same for Ireland. It didn't matter whether it was Tato Crisps, Guinness, Boyzone. It didn't
What I
matter.
have here.
Oh, look at that jersey! Look at
My communion money.
you need to do the Packy Bonner grin with his teeth when he does that.
I love the shoulder pads, the elbow pads.
Wow. But yeah, so and it's a long-winded answer, but that's where I got into Boyzone. As in, Boyzone were top of the charts in 1995 in the UK, in 1996, 1997. So when all the English lads were going, boy bands, Boyzone, it's all about Take That and Oasis, and I loved Oasis, class. But there was this big kind of Brit pop, Oasis, Blur, which were English, and then pop. But the biggest pop band at the time were Boyzone. Yeah. So I was just singing the songs over. So much so that the first team lads, John Pemberton, Gary Speed, Gary McAllister, Gary Kelly, used to start nicknaming me Ronan on the football pitch, on the soccer pitch. So when I was leaving Leeds, I had like long blonde hair. I knew every Boyzone song word for word. And when I got home, I started hosting karaoke with my dad because he was in that industry. And he'd come out, he was in a band. He was in, like, let's say, a real musician. So he would come out with me on other nights where he would, he'd have a bit of time off, and we'd present karaoke, and I'd be singing Boyzone songs and Backstreet Boys. And so then when the audition came up, I was like, well,
you're ready.
What to lose?
Yeah.
No, and I never looked back.
That's unreal. That's actually unreal. I didn't think it'd be like that at all for you. Like, we grew up in the north side of Dublin, where you say, I'm going to go for an audition for a boy band. You're like, what? Yeah. And it's just the football culture, especially, that you were in. That's quite rare. Like, you realize that, right? That the path that you took to then take a detour and go completely different route. And that, for me, is one of the most fascinating things about you, Nicky, is your ability to reinvent yourself. And maybe it's a subconscious thing on your part where you don't really realize you're doing it. You just like what you're doing. You're really good at it. To go from football to Boyzone there, you're talking about Boyzone, to Westlife, and the huge success that you had. Now, my wife didn't know who Westlife were. And I was saying, are you serious? Like, and then I'm on a text chain with a few of our friends, another couple, a girl from Scotland, and Richie is from Temple Toohey, Tipperary, and he's a footballer over here. And I said, I'm having Nicky on. They're like, you're joking, Nicky Byrne. And Meg is like, who's Nicky Byrne? I said, you have to realize, like, so I've been banging on Westlife songs over the last few days, trying to get her used to it.
Is your wife American?
Yeah, Chicago, yeah.
And it's funny because Westlife, we exploded, right? And back in 2000, we did 5 UK number ones, and then we signed a big deal in the States to go and launch into America and basically, break America, as you say. We got signed to a guy called Clive Davis, who was head of Arista Records, who founded Whitney Houston, blah, blah, blah. Clive loved us, absolutely loved us. We were on Regis and Kathy Lee. I know Regis died there recently, the great talk show. We were with Jay Leno. It was just about bubbling for us with Swear It Again. And Swear It Again was number 20 on Billboard. So it was a nice little entry. We were about to come back with Flying Without Wings. And Clive Davis moved away from Arista Records. So all of a sudden, that got paused. And it's like a football club. The top guy loses his gig. The next guy comes in called L.A. Reid. He's no interest in Westlife. So we're now, we'll say, in America, labelless. And we were now in a holding pattern for the States. The rest of the world is going bananas. It's huge for us. So now all of a sudden, the more time we're away from the States, the less kind of important it's becoming to us. But then we get a big opportunity because we have Flying Without Wings, which is one of our greatest songs. And American Idol had just gone on TV in the States. And about a year into American, Simon Cowell, who's obviously Simon Cowell, as we all know, he wasn't famous at the time in 2000. He was our A&R man. He then gets the gig on American Idol and he becomes a superstar as this, the villain, the British villain on American TV. And then he suggests for a guy called Ruben Studdard, I think his name was, to record Flying Without Wings. And all of a sudden, our golden ticket was taken, obviously. Well, you can't say taken. Anybody can record it because we don't own it. And then had we gone back, it would have looked like we're doing a cover of Flying Without Wings. So that got paused and banned. And then a few years later, so this was at the time when Backstreet Boys were huge in the States, Britney, Christina, NSYNC. We were with all those guys on all the European and everywhere, all those trips. The States, just because of this reason, wasn't happening. And then a few years later, we had a song called World of Our Own, which you'll remember. And
I'm singing all these as you say them. I'm singing them all.
RCA Records come back to us and say, right, we want to launch Westlife again in the States. And by the time, that was 02, 03 maybe, by the time that had happened, pop had kind of died in America. The record companies, the radio stations weren't really interested and didn't really want to be playing pop music. So our chance, let's say, for a few different reasons, never happened. And nowadays, what's strange enough as well is this is all pre-social media. It's pre-Twitter. It's pre-Instagram. It's pre-Snapchat and all those things. Nowadays, it's easier. No, I won't say easier. That's wrong. That's probably not fair. But it's easier to get your music onto a world platform. Now, back then, we had to be jumping on planes to get to LA. Then I remember being in the States for 4-6 months, and we did 3 states a day. We would do breakfast radio in, let's say, Boston. We'd get on a flight to New York. We'd do afternoon radio. Get on a flight down to somewhere else in New York State, do something else. Next day, be down to Jacksonville in Florida, and we move on. And we did that for 4 or 6 months. And like Ireland, you can come to Ireland and do the Late Late Show, and pretty much everybody will see you. In America, you need to be doing nearly every state like that, so it's just different times.
No, exactly. You can be missed completely on network television here. You could jump from one to the other, and there's so many different channels. How much admiration do you have for Niall Horan then and everything he's done?
Really good guy, very talented. And again, what was great for Niall was One Direction. When we just went, we were 14 years, and all the label who signed 1D were basically the label who had us. So everything that worked with us worked with 1D. So I could nearly see it going to be huge for them, because RCA Records, Simon Cowell, Sonny Tacker, all those guys who worked with us. Sonny actually manages now, but they put all their energy into 1D, brand new boy band, great songs, and they had the Twitter. They were, I'm going to say the Twitter band, we'll say, because Twitter in what would that be, in 2012, 2013, was just exploding. So, you could put 1D in this house and record a cappellas and do interviews, and you could just put it on Twitter, and people in Australia or Georgia or wherever were watching them live. It was just a new way. It was
mental. Yeah, it is. You're describing these guys like they're the Mina Raiolas and the Jorge Mendezes of music. It's gas.
Yeah, no, it's not much different, actually, to be fair, at that level, with the top kind of football managers and the machine behind it all,
What about Westlife, if you were to give us a little bit of insight into the culture of the group, what made you guys such a success? Like, what key traits did you guys have, do you think, looking back now, that you're like, do you know what, that was probably a reason we stuck together and we were so successful?
Well, you mentioned earlier about how everybody needs luck, and I think we had the luck. There's also elements that you make when you have the luck. You take the opportunity with 2 hands, and then you make your own luck as you go. We were right place, right time with in terms of Louis Walsh, because Boyzone had done 6 years. They wanted a break. They were probably a bit tired themselves, and Ronan was going solo, as was Stephen at the time. So Louis was looking for his next big thing. He signed us. So that was one plus, box ticked immediately. You had Louis Walsh behind you. Louis then brought us to Simon Cowell in the UK. Simon had just signed 5. If you don't remember that boy band 5.
Yeah, of course I do. 5 Megamix. You having a laugh?
So the lads from 5 were probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ahead of us. And they were, we'll say, the bad boys of pop. And Simon wanted to emulate the Spice Girls when he signed us. He wanted characters and he wanted great music. So immediately he put us in with the top songwriters, Steve Mack, Max Martin, and all these guys. Max, for example, had written Baby One More Time for Britney, Bye Bye Bye, and so we were immediately in that studio in Stockholm and the studio in London with Steve Mack. So we were right place, right time. But in all of that, the reason we got that opportunity was because the voices that were together, a cappellas we were doing, we were consistently proving, because boy bands get a bad rap for, not being able to sing, or having one decent vocalist, and you've heard all the laugh. You laugh along with it. So we had to prove ourselves more times than not, in terms of going, okay, well, we can do this live, we can cut this live. And I think our first year we did a radio tour of the UK and Ireland, just doing a cappellas. Even we sang songs like Boys to Men, End of the Road. We would just go in and we'd have these off just to a T. We had to consistently. It'd be like a singer-songwriter, like a Dermot Kennedy, for example, now going in and at the drop of a hat, or an Ed Sheeran, playing a song and doing it live. And if you're in your car driving to work and you hear that, you're going, really like that song or that person, and he can cut it live. And we were consistently proving that. And I think that gave us the chance. Now, 2 things we had. One was work ethic, and 2 was friendship. We never allowed people get in between us, you know, kind of managers or tour managers or label people telling you you're better than me or you should go solo. We never allowed that kind of get in amongst us. You know, you're stronger together.
Was that something you always talked about?
Yeah, completely. You know, we're always stronger together. Unless one of us is unhappy and wants to leave or wants to go solo, or that's a different argument or conversation. But I think that's the same. That's camaraderie and that's team effort. That's the same as a football team. When you're out there, I mean, I've gone through situations, and I know this being a footballer as well. You might not like the person you're playing with. You might have fallen out with them in the dressing room, you know, an hour ago or a week ago and not spoken to him. But when you get on that pitch or on that stage, you're best buddies and you die for them, you know. And that's the same with a band. You know, you make up as you go. Maybe a little bit more different in a band because you're down on the tour bus with that person and you're going for breakfast with that person and you're having beers with that person that evening. Whereas with the footballer, you know, when the game's over, you don't have to see him till the next day or whatever. So, but I think that's important. I think that's very, very important that you don't do that. Hey, baby. Sorry.
In terms of, yeah.
It's one of my little kids. You all right? You saying hello?
What's up, Gia?
Saying hello? We're live on Zoom.
I was about to say you're the image of your daddy, but very like her mammy.
Absolutely. But yeah, with the Westlife thing, also I think with the look is huge. But you have to grab the opportunity. You know, you really have to and take it from there. You know. But then in saying that, I always say there's better singers than us. There's better footballers. Like I've not made it. So opportunity is huge, and it's about grabbing it. But you touched on something before, how I reinvent myself. And do you know what I think that is? I think that's built out of fear. There's I don't know if the word is in depth, kind of inside of me going, you can't rest on your laurels. You can't, just because you become successful, when that ends, you have to, it's okay to take a bit of time out, but then you have to think, right, well, where do I go next? And how do I approach it? And then it's all guns blazing then.
That's phenomenal that you just said that. My dad said to me earlier on in quarantine, it's either a famine or a feast, whether you're younger with girls or whether you're older with jobs, whatever it is. And earlier on in quarantine, I was talking to my dad and he said to me, you know, fear is the greatest driver for success. Whether you like it or not, it's you know, everything comes your way. You can rest on your laurels a little bit, but when you have that in your mind that I can't sit still because I'll become stagnant and stale, and you have to keep moving forward at all times. So well done, man. Honestly, I mean it sincerely. It's inspirational stuff because you do jump from one to the other. And I watched you when I was at Dancing with the Stars, and I had a chance to watch you in January. The thing that struck me most about you, which I utterly admired, was you were ready for every scenario nearly. You know, the show Dancing with the Stars is in front of a live audience. You have to be ready for something that could pop out of nowhere to happen. You've got the personality to deal with that. But you're having a laugh with the contestants, with the audience, up until the very last second, until you need to speak on camera. And I think what that does is it puts everyone at ease. Everyone in the room then is having fun. You set the tone. And I always compare hosting to having a party in your house, where you decide what music you want on. You decide what energy level you want to bring to the party. You decide what food is going to be served. And you brought that. And that was something that I said to my sister Mary, who worked on the show as well. I said to her, like, Nicky's great at that. And so was Jenny as well, because you both had that enthusiasm about the show and your love for the show. And it just came across, Nicky.
Listen, I appreciate that. Thank you. And listen, things like that, it might look like it comes easy, but you have to be yourself is one thing, right? And like that too. It's a live TV show on TV, live to the people in the room. When you go to an ad break, it's like you said, you put that the people in the room at ease. But I always remember somebody saying to me, and it stuck with me for years, a good host just brings the show from A to B without making it about themselves. So the stars of the show are the stars of the show, i.e. the celebrities on Dancing with the Stars, or if it's a chat show, for example, it's all about your guest. It's all about, you know, sitting there, finding out about the guest, and rather than making it about you. Now, for me, that's sometimes like I've been on the other side of it, where I'm talking about myself, trying to plug records or whatever it might be. But I've always, even though I've done that, I've always looked at that, like you said to me, I always looked at the host. When I went on breakfast radio with Westlife, I'd be looking at the guys presenting the show going, yeah, that's a great job. Love to be asking the questions as well, you know. So it didn't come by fluke. I did look at the best, you know, as a kid, your Gay Byrnes of the world, in the older world, Ryan Seacrest, you know, Dermot O'Leary in the UK, Ryan Tubridy here at the moment, And, you know, you look at it, but you take something from a bit of every, you know, from everybody, a bit of everybody, you know, and put it together and then go, then you have to bring your personality to it yourself. But look, I appreciate those kind words. And like I said, with live television, anything can happen, because on Dancing with the Stars, not on last year's, or the year before, we had a blackout. So it was on me at the time. I'm chatting to the celebs up in the celeb box, as they call it. And next of all, complete darkness, everything goes. I don't know if we're still on TV, like, because can't see. I literally
That's
couldn't
hard.
see. So I'm talking. The worst part about it was, when you're on live TV, you have a director in your ear. So if anything goes wrong, the director might tell. If you don't not see, he or she might tell you. Because we had a blackout, which was, it ended up being a generator that failed, which meant we went off air. We'd no links, mics in your ear. We'd no live anything. So nobody could tell me what was happening. But I didn't know if we were still on air. Now,
Stage manager had no clue either, right?
No, nobody had a clue. So we just kept talking away, and it was a scary moment for me, because I thought, you know, is this like some sort of crazy moment where somebody's going to run into the building, or are we still live on TV? And then all of a sudden, somebody came around with a torch going, generator's gone, we're off air, everybody relax. We couldn't even turn on the house lights for the crowd to be, you know, to calm them even, you know. So, and I remember speaking to Eamon Holmes about it, who's a big Irish presenter in the UK. And he said, I've been in TV for years, but he said, I've never had the absolute blackout like that. But yeah, look, you just got to be ready for anything.
That's mental. I always tell young people coming through that the best thing you can do is just throw yourself into the industry and learn every aspect of it, because when you're on air and a fire is going on in the control room and something happens, you're prepared. You know in your ear, all right, I know what's going on, or that graphic's not going to be ready, or whatever else. And you put yourself in a better position to succeed rather than just wanting to be on TV.
The worst, Dev, I don't know if you've had that moment where there could be, like, as you said, an explosion or something going on upstairs in the gallery, and the director literally goes to you, Nicky, you need to fill for 2 minutes. Yeah. And then they switch. And you're like, and while I could be chatting to you going, oh, Kevin, that was a brilliant tango. And next of all, I've heard, fill for 2 minutes. And my head's going, shit, what do I say now? Well, you know, how do I drag this out?
That's why I hire someone like you. You're a good talker, and Jenny's good at that as well. And if the two of you are together, you could fill for an hour, no bother. So it's no, good stuff, man. Nicky, thank you so much. I've taken up far too much of your time now already, and I greatly appreciate it. I love the conversation, how you have reinvented yourself from the football days to Westlife to now TV and radio, and I'm dying to see whatever may come next. I know you're going to make a huge success of it. So Nicky Byrne, gent, thank you so much. Love that chat with Nicky Byrne. Such a really good guy, successful guy at that, yet continues to remain incredibly humble. And the one thing I'm taking out of that the most, I think, is the fact that he never wants to stand still, get stagnant, and he's always pushing forward in his career. And he said that fear keeps him motivated, and I think we can all take something from that. So Nicky, cheers, much appreciated. Folks, we'll love you and leave you for now. We'll get back at it again next week with Kicking Off. Again, please hit subscribe on YouTube and on your favorite podcast platform. Leave a little rating and review, and tell a friend if you enjoy these conversations. We'll do it all again. Looking forward to it. Ciao for now.